And Jared decided maybe not Wolverine, maybe a demon, you know, or whatever. But I bet he sculpted, and this is not a joke, 200 Wolverines in his life. You know, fairly finished ones.
I've started 200 maybe.
Okay,
I've
well.
probably finished about 4.
Okay. So another thing we talk a lot about, just briefly, which is not exactly the process, but is influence. We don't think a lot of young people are looking at the right stuff. You know, the stuff. You know, not like the stuff was way better in my day or whatever, but
It was a better time.
but all of our stuff is basically comes from Frazetta. That's who we worship.
Yeah.
And he's the godfather of what we do. And beyond that, we're influenced by a whole range of things, and you can't stop looking at these people. There are people on the show. Simon Lee is a person we really look up to. He's better than us. We know it. We try to.
We can deal with it.
Yeah. I was like, at some point we're either going to have to kill him or just come to grips. And so we, you know, you don't rip him off, but you study it. I mean, you have to look at the people who are better than you. One, you have to recognize who's better than you. Then you have to study them and why.
Our limbs have gotten longer since Simon Lee. That's true.
Yeah, he does.
Full not to.
Yeah. So I would just say real quickly, sculpturally, we look at Takeyuki Takeya, the Japanese master, Yasushi Nirasawa, who designed a lot of his stuff. Yuji Oniki is another guy who did a lot of work with them. Those guys wrote a book called The Creature Core. That's what got me and Jared started. We were like, oh my God. We didn't realize what could be done in 3 dimensions.
There was also a book called Revenge, the Garage Kit That Ate My Wallet, and the Revenge of the Garage Kit That Ate My Wallet, done by Terry Webb, who was just in here.
Yeah, well, you see a lot of old resin kits.
Right.
So this stuff is a constant inspiration, and some of it in our original work, you can see it. You know, some pieces were like, okay, this is an homage to Frazetta, just flat out, or Kat Terada, a Japanese illustrator I love.
Bisley is a huge influence to us.
Yes.
Even though it's 2D, it's still...
We're comic book guys, and that's where we come from. Like, I would say almost every sculptor in that show comes from, they were inspired by movies. They saw Alien, they saw Predator, and that's why me and Jared, it was comic books. We love movies, but we wanted to sculpt Elektra, Daredevil, Batman. That's all we cared about. We kind of still do in our own way. Our original stuff is kind of us still trying to recreate that. So, back to the properties of super sculpting. The great thing about it, talk about baking it a little, Jared. Like when you finish it up, you bake it in your home oven. That's the genius of this stuff. It's not a kiln at a very low temperature, like lower than it says on the box.
The box says about 275, but that's for small pieces of jewelry like that. And some people do bake that high, but we go about 220 or 230. And it's real good to ventilate, open the windows, and use the fans and stuff, because it's almost like if you were standing by a car that's running, you would stand there and talk to the person, but you wouldn't stand with the car in the garage. You know what I mean? You want to open the windows and ventilate it. When the Sculpey is, the smoke isn't bad unless it starts to burn, unless it starts to purple or brown, and that's when it's
So you have to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't just put it in there and go, I'll be back in 2 hours. You watch it, because
It's good to have a flashlight to shine into the oven too, to
little
see if any of the
spots
spots
can
are
start browning or
brown.
bubbling, and that's a
If
disaster.
it's too close to the iron, exactly.
Yeah, it's too close to the filament. A lot of this stuff, if we were going to bake him and it's too tall, we would get some aluminum foil right here. We would lay it like this and let it bake like that. Also, this is something I should have said when I was talking about the armature. You want to bulk out anything that gets big. Let's say
Aluminum foil.
beyond what, Jared?
About
a half an inch or 3/4 of an inch.
Any thicker than about that right there.
Foil. Aluminum foil packed in there.
Exactly.
It makes it lighter.
It reduces stress on
Yes.
the piece.
And it's a little cheaper because you're not using the clay. But more importantly to us, it's the cracking. So another huge thing, this is the question we get the most, is how do you prevent cracking? That's one thing, the weight with the aluminum foil, if you're working something bigger.
Sculpting is heavy, that's one of the downsides of it.
Yeah, and secondly, when you finish baking, let's say you do it at 220 or 230 for 2 hours, you turn off the oven and you don't touch it. You don't pull it out of the oven, you don't poke at it, which you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say, is that hard?
Even us, we want to reach in and, you know.
So, but when you do that, that's when it's hardening on the inside. So you have to let it do that.
There's moisture in the crystals, or it could feel almost cool out here, but there's still moisture and the crystals are settling on the inside. So you want to just let it where it's room temperature all the way through, like 4 or 5 hours later.
If you can leave it overnight,
Leave it overnight.
it's perfectly cool. Another thing about cracking is we tell each other, you may pull it out and there are these cracks, this is a design, it's ruined. Everything's fixable.
It's all one fix. The whole sculpture is one long fix.
Yeah, I mean, you sculpted in the first place, you can fix it. On tiny spider cracks, we'll use tiny amounts of super glue. We use a plumber's putty. It's 2-part. It's like gray and light gray on the outside. You mix it together, it gets real hot and real hard. We use that in some of the cracks.
Yeah, if we do like super glue on a crack, just do it and then wipe it off real quick. And if you wipe it off pretty quick, the surface will be good and the super glue will go down on the inside. And if it's a big crack, we might do super glue and let it dry 2 or 3 times. And
then you might talk about like how you might sand it, Mod Podge, stuff like that.
yeah, we've got a demo on our forum of like a really bad crack, and then we repair it. But we would do super glue, and then there's this great stuff called Mod Podge, MODPODGE, and it's for sealing the back of jigsaw puzzles. But also, it's very viscous. It's almost like Elmer's glue, but if you mix it with a little bit of water, and then you put it on anywhere on here, the water will find a level. And so then when that dries, you put a little bit more on there, and then that dries, and you build it up, and eventually you can't see that crack at all. It's completely gone. You can almost get it too smooth.
So there are 2 big tricks with super sculpting. When it's still, before you've baked it, when it's still soft, and think you're about done with it, we take rubbing alcohol and a paintbrush, and we go over the piece. And that's taking out little fingerprints, little imperfections.
Try to get the 91% because there's
Right.
often 70% and 91%.
Some of these nicks and stuff you almost don't see till it's baked, and you're like, where did that come from? We try to rubbing alcohol, and now it makes the super sculpting tacky and kind of hard to work, so you want to save it for last. Then the best trick we know, sometimes we bake multiple times. We'll pull it out of the oven and we'll do some more work on his arms or what have you. And the way you do that is
Vaseline, any kind of petroleum jelly. After it's baked, if you were to go to put a piece of fresh Sculpey on baked Sculpey, it wouldn't really ever stick. But if you put on some Vaseline and then wipe it off, a little bit goes a long way, just a minuscule amount. Then you put on the Sculpey and it sticks perfectly. It's just some small chemical reaction. I don't really know what it is. But it will stick on there and it will smooth perfectly flush. And that's another good thing about the plumber's putty, is the plumber's putty and the baked Sculpey will sand flush with each other perfectly. You won't even be able to see the difference. So that's good.
When you bake it for a second time, do you do anything different? Like, do you bake it at the same temperature, or do you bake it lower?
We will try to bake the whole piece as few times as possible. Once we've got it baked, if it's small pieces, we'll heat gun it. And that way you're not heating the whole thing inside and out. It's less stressful to the piece. If I have something real small, I might even cover a lot of them with aluminum foil.
Yeah, mask it
And
off.
just hit it with and the heat guns, I always say, keep it on low. It's better to hit it low 10 times too low than to hit it once too hot, because then you're damaging it.
Bubbles, it blackens, you've screwed it. You've got to be really careful with those things. They get so hot.
Yeah.
The stuff Super Sculpting Firm, you need to go in our art store. What we do, a lot of times we'll go in there and we'll feel the stuff. We'll open the box and and get nasty looks from employees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Because
started
this,
taping